It is 9 o'clock. The hour is upon us. There are handouts. There's a handout, not handouts. But there's more than one. If you want more than one, or maybe there's more than one over here. So we are in week 2 of Sabbath, using this framework of Sabbath as resistance, courtesy of our dear friend, the late, great Walter Brueggemann, the great Old Testament scholar, on his book Sabbath as Resistance. We talked mainly about that last week. This week we're going to look at Rest is Resistance, a manifesto by Tricia Hershey. You're welcome to check either of those out, should you like. And then next week, I think we're going to talk more directly about what I'm going to be doing on my sabbatical, and I'd love to hear ideas about how you all are able to rest in your life. But to center ourselves, I thought we'd begin with a prayer for prayer blessing on the Sabbath. So let's tune our hearts and minds into this Sabbath blessing.
God of holy rest, on the 7th day you paused, laying down the work of creation, and entered into sacred stillness. Let us remember we were freed from slavery in Egypt, and you called us to be people of liberation. Kindle in us the strength to say no to a world of perpetual busyness. Inspire us to set aside all of our plans and goals to receive the lavish gift of rest for ourselves. Let the Sabbath be a time of profound renewal, of intimate connection with you, and a rekindling of our holy desires to be of service. Sustain in us the desire to simply be, and not succumb to the demands of productivity and an endless string of achievements. Let our lives be a loving witness to a world of restoration and refreshment, of the profound goodness of joy and delight, taking pleasure in the generous gift of pausing.
I want you to imagine yourself as best as you can as an ancient Israelite coming out of a culture, a religion, and a state that taught very clearly who God is and who you are. And what they taught was that creation was birthed in violence between warring gods, and humanity was created from the dead carcass of a slain God. So birthed in violence, birthed from the dead carcass of gods who were violent one with another. And those gods would battle with each other, and it kept them up at night. The fighting did, and meant they couldn't get enough sleep. And in order to deal with this, they created people to do their work for them. Because they're so tired from all their battling, they couldn't sleep, so they created people to do this work for them as slaves, and that's where you come from. And that's who you are. Created by gods of violence for slavery, to serve the gods. And of course, the gods have a representative on earth who is in human form. And that God is Pharaoh. So that God, that person's a God, and you are created to serve him. And this is your purpose and lot in life. So go be a good human being and serve the Pharaoh all the days of your life without rest. And then you get around a campfire late at night when your overlords aren't watching you. And there's this old, wise woman who says, I know what these Egyptians have told you who you are. I'm going to tell you another story. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth was formless and void, and darkness was over the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. And God said, let there be light, and there was light. God saw that the light was good. God separated the light from the darkness. The light he called day, and the darkness he called night. It was evening, it was morning, the first day. And the story goes on, and as you listen to the story, you notice there's no violence. None whatsoever. And when it gets to the creation of humanity, it's not to create little slaves, but these images of God. That the Pharaoh is not merely one of, but all of you are created in the image of this God who is not violent, but has created the world good and called it good and blessed it. And at the pinnacle of all creation is this gift of rest. The seventh day, where you're created for rest. Not as something that you've earned because of the hard work you did the 6 days of the week. I did my 6 days, so I've earned my day of rest. It has nothing to do with earning because it's a gift. And if something is a gift, it cannot be earned. Otherwise, it's not a gift, it's a wage. But the Sabbath is not a wage. It's a gift given to you by God that you are invited to participate in, to slow down, to stop working, regardless of who's in charge. Because over the course of Israel's history, who is in charge changed all the time. And very rarely did the person in charge say, you know what? I think it's a great idea that you people rest 1 day a week. Usually the people in charge says, I want more from you. Work harder, work more, do more. It's never enough. You're never enough. You're lazy. Stop asking for things like vacation and rest. It's not what we're here for. We're here to work. But here's this story that comes and says, that the people in power are largely always going to be saying that to you. And your temptation is that you're going to believe them and think that your worth and your value are tied up with your production. But God has a better story for you than that. One that invites you to remember who you truly are, which is the image of God created by a God who rests and a God who invites you to rest. So this vision of Sabbath as resistance is not one that I'm typically, it's not usually what I think of Sabbath as, that we're here to resist narratives that want to enslave us. But Brueggemann, Tricia Hershey, many others argue that from the very beginning, the Sabbath was deprogramming, helping people deprogram from gods who wanted all of their work and labor and no time to rest. So last week we looked primarily at the Exodus 20, the giving of the Ten Commandments at Sinai, which if you recall, when the commandment's given, remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. And it goes back then, the justification. Why should we do this? Well, in Exodus 20, the reason is because God rested on the seventh day. God's a God of rest, so you are commanded to rest. Well, what happens then, of course, Exodus 20 is the story of the giving of the law to Moses, and before he can even bring the law down to the people, they've already forsaken the Lord and created golden calves, and so the original tablets get destroyed, and then Moses goes up and gets new ones and comes down again. And then, of course, the people end up not taking the promised land, but instead wandering in the wilderness for 40 years. At the end of that 40 years, it's time. We're ready. The whole generation of slaves in Egypt is dead for the most part. They've all died in the wilderness. And now a new generation is coming, and they're ready finally to enter into the promised land. And that's what the book of Deuteronomy is. The book of Deuteronomy, Deutero means what? Two. Onomy, law, second law. Law was given initially at Sinai, now it's being given again. Why? Because every generation needs to hear these words freshly. It's not enough that your grandparents heard it. It's not enough that your parents heard it. You need to hear this. And so it's told again. And whenever something's told again, it's always done a little bit different, right? It's not just a verbatim repetition of what's already given. It's given freshly in different ways because you're different people and this is a different time. So here we are at the Sabbath commandment in Deuteronomy 5, and listen for the differences. Observe the Sabbath day and keep it holy as the Lord your God commanded you. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. You shall not do any work, you or your son or your daughter or your male or female slave, or your ox or your donkey or any of your livestock, or the resident alien in your towns, so that your male and female slave may rest as well as you. Remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt, and the Lord your God brought you out from there with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm. Therefore the Lord your God commanded you to keep the Sabbath day. What do you notice this time around that may be different than the one we heard last week?
I don't think it was just presented, it was told,
Mm-hmm.
this is what you're going to do, instead of just, here's the 10 Commandments. It's now you're going to do this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I often use the language of invitation. God often uses the language of command. Now, in my theology, they're ultimately the same thing. But it's interesting that God uses different language, right? God uses the language of command.
It's inclusive.
Yes. How so? It's an inclusive command.
Yeah, have the donkeys.
Yeah, even your animals. Which is why you have folks who take the Sabbath very seriously. They'll go to things like, this is why we don't run the dishwasher today. This is why we don't run the laundry today. These machines have taken the place of the people who used to do this work. And this is a day of rest. And we're here to rest, not because our machines are people, but because they're doing our labor for us. And this is not a day of labor. It's a day of not labor. Jackie.
And as I read that, I think someone's got a day to daily rest. And people still eat. Someone is doing some work.
Does anybody remember some of the ways Israel God dealt with that? Because the Torah does deal with that. Think of them actually being in the wilderness. What did they eat when they were wandering in the wilderness? Manna. And how long did the manna last? Yeah, it lasted exactly 24 hours. If you tried to take it longer than that, it would mold over. Except on one day a week where it somehow lasts. You could gather enough on Friday for 2 days so that on Saturday you wouldn't have to gather manna. Now, I mean, whatever you think about the historicity, it's clearly describing a world that we don't have normal access to. How about that? Most of us don't have access to magical bread that doesn't go moldy. Right? If you do, I'd love to know about it. We don't have that. But it's still pointing to something. It's pointing to something that these scriptures are commanding us to make real in our life under the constraints that we live in, which is, find a way to prepare. So in strictly Jewish households that follow the Sabbath, there's a lot of work that's done on Friday getting ready for Saturday. A lot of work. You got to get ready because Sabbath is coming. How many of you have seen the Fiddler on the Roof with Zero Mostal? And one of the things I love about it is the way the family's preparing for Sabbath. It's like, hurry. We got to go light candles. And you have to hurry because Sabbath's coming, whether you're ready for it or not. So you've got to be ready. You've got to change your life and your rhythms to be prepared for this coming gift of God. There's another big difference here in this commandment from the one in Exodus 20. In Exodus 20, the reasoning is the Lord your God rested on the seventh day, so you should rest as well. Here the reasoning is, remember you were a slave in the land of Egypt. Which is interesting on multiple levels. One, most of them, in point of fact, weren't. Their parents were. And those parents are largely dead now. But it's this, in the same way you might have thought in the videos saying, remember you were a slave in Egypt. You're like, well, that's not me. Well, in the biblical imagination, that's the way this works. You're invited to be part of this story and take on the story as your own. Not that we try to steal Jewish stories from Jewish people, but the Christians understood this is part of their life too, in the same way that if you go to African American churches in our country, you're going to hear a lot more preaching from the Old Testament than you often will in Protestant whiter churches. And a lot of that preaching in the Old Testament is going to be on things like Exodus and liberation from Pharaoh. Because black slaves in this country, as they were Christianized, the part of the story they latched onto right away was, oh, when they read things like, you were a slave in the land of Egypt, all of a sudden light bells went off, and that sounds familiar to my story. And so they latched on to this vision of liberation in a way that folks who haven't had that in their recent histories perhaps don't latch on to it as much. So the same command is given, but it's different reasoning. And so last week, Brueggemann described the initial creation command as a resistance to anxiety. And here he's describing it as a resistance to coercion. The invitation to remember that we were slaves and God delivered us. Now, do we see the irony though too? What's the irony, Jared? Decide. What is it?
They themselves have.
Darn it, right? And this is something that we see throughout the Bible that kind of, you would think in a vacuum that the logic of liberation would be, we were slaves, let's not do that to anybody else. But they're not there. Slavery was a part of the ancient world and remained so well past Jesus' time. And so the logic of liberation doesn't take hold as a universal human principle till much later. And I wish it did take hold earlier. I wish that the Hebrew scriptures were more clear about that. I wish Jesus was clearer about it than he is. But one thing the Bible seems to always do is it takes people where they are. Takes them where they are and speaks to them in a language they can't understand. John Calvin, our great theological forebearer in Presbyterian church history, described that the way God speaks to us through the scriptures is the way a nursemaid speaks in lisps to a baby that she's holding. God lisps into our ears with baby talk. And that's what the Bible is. It's baby talk. Because we're babies. And God speaks to us in a language that we can understand. But part of that is going to be God takes the world as it is and loves it as it is. And I believe puts in place little seeds of liberation that ripen when the time is right. I wish it was sooner than it is. But it is a great irony. Hey, let your slaves rest. Let's talk about whether or not we should have slaves. We'll save that for another day. Another planet. So I both hate it and I love it. I hate it that it's there, but I love it because it's real. It's not self-righteous. It's not giving a history that's brighter than it actually was. This is who they were. Slavery is part of their life. Let's read Brueggemann's quote here about prosperity. Moses knows that prosperity breeds amnesia. Israel will come to think that the goal of life is to acquire and acquire and acquire, and in order to acquire, Israelites must compete with the neighbor. The system will turn one's neighbor into a competitor and a threat and a challenge. Moses warns Israel to watch out. or the land and its productivity will transform Israelites into producers and consumers and will destroy the fabric of the covenantal neighborhood. Moses warns the Israelites, if you forget this, you will give your life over to coercive competition.
Sounds quite familiar.
Does it? How so, Sheila?
Well, just recently, there was a big article in the paper about all the medical associations in Columbus, like Ohio State, Ohio Health, Mount Carmel, how the reason they're building so much is because they have to get more money and that they're spending a lot of money on buildings. So they can charge patients more money. And that's supposed to be medical health.
That's interesting. I'd like to read that article. Because I've certainly borne witness to the fact that when I moved to the city in 1997 and saw all the hospitals all over the city, look at them now. Every single one of them that is still around, some have closed, but those that are around, it is unbelievable. And every time a giant section is finished, we start on a new one. I don't know what it means, but it's interesting to me. Yeah. If you forget this, you will give your life over to coercive competition. How have you seen your own life the way that prosperity has bred amnesia, either in yourself, in your neighborhood, in your culture? However you want to think about that.
I think it's an interesting notion that in different words, history repeats itself.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of pay attention to what's going on and don't forget it.
Yeah.
Kind of learn from it, not make that same mistake.
We are an incredibly forgetful people. This is why I still believe in things like churches meeting every week. Because I think we need it, because we don't remember, because we forget, and we need to be reminded again, because we spend 6 3/4 of days of the week completely indoctrinated by a system of coercive competition. Non-stop coercive competition. And we expect that the 1/4 of the one day that we come to hopefully deprogram is enough. And hopefully, hopefully it is doing its work. But this is why we still need them. You'd like to think, wait a minute, I've been going my whole life. Have I got the message yet? Maybe, but if you leave, the coercive competition message is not going to stop. So you can leave church, but you better find some other alternative narrative, or you're just going to be completely, you'll have no resistance left. You'll be completely at the mercy of the story of our culture. So how do we, yeah, Kathy?
And we also have gotten into this habit of let's taking away all the negative things that happened in our past because we don't want to show those negative things to our young influential people, but then they forget. To some extent.
That's interesting how the way you phrase that we want to take away the negative things in our past. And then how did you phrase it after that? Like,
and that we don't want our young people who are influential to see the bad things that we've gone through, but you have to understand that in order to not repeat it.
Yes, there's this need that we have to remember our vulnerability. Back when we were slaves, back when we were children, as we'll see in the gospel reading today, and we as humans often deal with those difficult parts of our past, and we want to put them away and not think about them anymore. But that's amnesia. That's prosperity breeding amnesia, as opposed to remembering. Remember where you came from. And I recognize that when it comes to trauma, historical, personal, or otherwise, it ain't easy to remember. And it hurts, and it's scary, and it's just easier sometimes to put it away. Yep, got all that. But when we just put it away, it without dealing with it, without transforming it, it ends up just being passed on, right? Richard Rohr loves to say, whatever is not transformed is transmitted. So the pain that we have, if we don't transform it, we just pass it on to others. Jeannie.
And to not deny other people access to knowing their vulnerabilities.
Yes.
And because they deserve to know that.
Yeah, I love the way you framed that. To not deny other people access to our vulnerabilities. And right with that, I thought you were going somewhere else, but it's also related that when we come through something difficult, whatever that is, take any, the steps that I had to go through to get ordained, and then transfer that to any, achievement you've had to make in your careers to get to wherever you got to. There can be this tendency in those systems to be like, well, I had to go through it. So think in medicine. I had to go through residency where I didn't sleep for 50 hours straight. So maybe everybody else should too. Who cares if it leads to worse patient outcomes and more deaths? I had to go through it. So should you. Well, that's stupid. What we should be doing, prioritizing, is health and well-being of our patients, right? And creating systems that do that. But when we come through something so difficult, instead of transforming it, we can just go, well, then everybody else has to do it too. As opposed to, man, that was really hard. I wonder if it's necessary. Some hard things are necessary, but some of them aren't. And maybe we should rethink those and not just pass them on, right? Go ahead again, Jean, and then we'll go to Barbara.
Well, to go a little further with that, banning books. I've seen a little bit about what's not in educational curricula and materials in 11 out of 50 states. And it's denying access to our history.
Yeah.
But something else that I'm thinking about in terms of today is I think there's so much going on that we're being asked to remember, perhaps maybe to act or to think about how we individually act, knowing these things. But I think we're so numb by just everything that's going on that it's really, it's almost, we're just like letting it pass over.
Yeah.
Not assimilating what should I as a Christian remember, what do I individually do about this?
Sure. And some of it is too much. We've talked about how the human brain, I don't think, is just designed for the amount of trauma inputs that we're. Yeah. Yeah. And it's numbing and breeds despair, and what else can I do, which is, or what can I do about this? And it's a very difficult cycle from which deliverance, so there's no easy answers. Barbara, you had your hand up.
I was gonna say, unfortunately, things come back to haunt us when we don't take care of the things in life.
Yeah.
It's there, it's back.
If we don't deal with the stuff from our past, it comes back to haunt us. Yeah. There's a great movie from early 2000s, late 90s, Magnolia. The line that gets repeated over and over again is, "We may be through with the past, but the past ain't through with us." It's like, yes, that's the great call to healing, to therapy. Cora, you had your hand up.
Well, I love all these words,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't see a way through it. I'm sorry. I just don't. Our culture is, if we're gonna live in this culture, and I've tried to walk upstream, and I continue to try.
Yep.
We can take it back to even my children when they were in high school, okay? When they were freshmen and the seniors were so mean to them and picked on them, and that was just a culture.
Yep.
And I said, and I would try to, hug them and just say, now try to remember when you're a senior.
Yeah.
Please try to remember, and I would challenge them every year to think about that. And the mentoring in my studio and stuff, this is very important to me to try to remember. But our culture, what were these words about prosperity? For me, being a freelancer, I have no idea how to do that, except when my walk is my Sabbath, and it's only an hour. So I don't know how to take a day off.
It's hard.
I'm going for a week holiday, starting Tuesday, but I don't know how to do that as a way of living, and I would love to. Now I don't have to earn money for their tuition and
Right.
mortgages paid, but before that, I wouldn't even, I mean, it just sounds ridiculous to me.
Yeah.
If I wanna live in this culture.
I hear you. It's really hard. And that's one thing I greatly appreciate about Tricia Hershey, who is a Black womanist theologian. The temptation when it comes to rest, as we'll see in some of her quotes, is to think this is for the privileged. It's only the super wealthy who are able to do this. But in reality, that's not even true. The super wealthy in our culture are often those who are working harder than everybody else, which is a true historical anomaly. Throughout history, the rich are rich and are lazy. That's the whole goal of being rich. Watch Downton Abbey. The goal is to be rich and sit around the goal is not to labor. And that's what ancestral wealth under old economies provided for people. That's not how it works anymore. The super wealthy often are working 100 hours a week. And I think that's actually quite dangerous because it does breed this incredible amnesia of I've earned everything I have. It's mine. I've worked harder for it than anybody else has ever worked for it. And it does not produce gratitude. It does not produce sharing, but instead further and further into individualism and so-called meritocracy that forgets that no matter what you've achieved, did you drive on roads to get to your work? Did you drink water from your faucet that kept you alive? Then you didn't create that. Even if you created something else, you are interdependent as well. But everything in our culture wants to move us towards total independency. So what I love about Tricia Hershey is that as a Black woman whose family has suffered greatly under the capitalistic pressures of our society, she's saying that we must resist the idea that one, this is impossible, and that two, this is only for the privileged. What it is incumbent upon us is to create systems and structures that make this available to everyone, which is exactly, incidentally, what Deuteronomy says, right? It's for everybody. Your household, your donkey. It's like, the donkey? Yes, the donkey. It's for everybody. And it's up to us to find ways that create space for rest. And it may not be for everybody a full 24 hours. I'm sure it's not. But I also think if we think it's impossible, was it possible during the Industrial Revolution when there were no child labor laws? When is it going to be possible? So we've got to find a way to be like, yeah, the culture says I need to live at this level of lifestyle, I need to live at this level of success, and I'm going to say no to it. And that applies to everything from our careers to what we get our kids involved with. The amount of time that parents don't have to, but feel they have to spend to get their kids involved in things is beyond overwhelming, yeah? No time for rest. Kathy.
Something that I heard a while ago, Jerry Jones, who owns the Dallas Cowboys, he came from poverty and he still believes he's in poverty, even though he has more than he could ever want. And he still strives for more because he just
It's never enough.
so strong that he continues that.
Yeah. Gene.
I was thinking about, when I grew up, stores weren't open on Sundays.
Yeah, we talked a little about that last week. Yeah, but please. Yeah.
And I don't know that we took advantage of that. I guess it depends on one's family. I know my mother did not cook on Sunday nights.
Mm-hmm.
We ate cereal and whatever. It's food.
Yes.
So that was one way, yes.
Yeah, we touched on this a little bit last week, how the old blue laws and old customs around Sabbath, I don't know were necessarily received as life-giving invitations to rest as much as the things we have to do because we're told we have to do them. And whenever commands become that, I think they will always wear themselves out and people will discard them. So, and my concern is that by resisting the overly puritanical ways, perhaps, of experiencing the Sabbath, we've just given it up and given ourselves over entirely to the monster of capitalism and consumerism. So because we weren't able to execute it in a way that was life-giving, we're like, cool, we'll just give it up entirely. and capitalism's there saying, thank you, I'll take it all, I'll take everything. And we're giving it to them. Kathy, and then I want to move on to Tricia.
Where's the separation of freedoms? Because I think if you think back, somebody complained that I don't believe in this belief, so therefore I should be able to do this on Sundays, creating that freedom that we're founded under. So there's always that as well as capitalism too.
Yeah, and it's interesting about how to do this in a multi-faith world. But I think part of my faith is to look at each human being, regardless of their faith or non-faith, and say, you too are worthy of rest. You deserve it, whether you know how to do it or not. Many of us have forgotten how to do it. We don't know how, for a whole host of reasons, not least because there are algorithms in our pockets that are constantly stealing our rest from us. Let's take a moment to look at Tricia Hershey a little bit. Her perspective is so unique and so helpful to me. She talks about grind culture as that which we need to resist. Our collective rest will not be easy. All of culture is collaborating for us not to rest. I understand this deeply. We are sleep deprived because the systems view us as machines, but bodies are not machines. Our bodies are the site of liberation. We are divine and our rest is divine. Rest is radical because it disrupts the lie that we are not doing enough. It shouts, no, that's a lie. I am enough. I am worthy now and always because I am here. I love that, her pointing out that voice of not enough. I wonder how you receive that message in your life. That it's not, I haven't done enough yet to deserve this. Where do you hear that message in your life in this culture? If rest is the reward for our hard work, how do we know we've ever done enough hard work? But if rest is instead the divine gift that has been given to us, it's not about deserving, right? It's about recognizing I've done enough now. She connects on page 2 very provocatively, but I think at minimum worthy of our consideration, the connection between capitalism and slavery. Capitalism was created on plantations. The roots of it are violence and theft. We as a culture gloss over this historical truth. But to dive into the cracks of this reality is where a profound part of your deprogramming from grind culture resides. To understand and meditate on this truth may place us all in a space of grief. We must grieve. Rest supports our grieving by allowing space, and with space we can begin healing from the trauma of grind culture. Grieving is a sacred act and one of the ways we can begin to reconnect with our bodies as we craft a rest practice. I love this connection. I had not thought of this until reading Tricia's book, the connection between rest and grief. And I see it deeply in my own heart, and I see it in your lives too. That the resistance to rest isn't always just our bosses or our bank accounts or whatever. Sometimes the resistance we have to rest is because if we slow down, the voices of grief are going to get too loud. And I'd much rather just avoid them and run away from the state as fast as I possibly. If I keep moving, I won't have to face my grief. And in reading this, it became clear to me over the course of my sabbatical as much space and time as we're setting aside for joy and celebration and all the great plans that we have as a family and that I have, I've realized, I need to make intentional space for grief. And I've taken some steps on that because I can feel it. I need to make space for grief. Have you experienced grief as healing? Tori,
Absolutely,
can you say more about it?
yes. As most of you know, I lost both parents last year and I was very involved in their care.
And I guess I would, like, one characterization would be that took up a lot of space in my life.
Yeah.
Which of course I felt blessed to be able to offer. And when they passed, that space was open again. And sometimes it's good and sometimes it feels hollow and empty.
Yes.
And I think that it's only when there's time to feel that emptiness and that hollowness that both intentionally and organically that space can be refilled.
Yeah.
Either just with taking care of myself or with time spent on things of quality that are life-giving once again.
Mm-hmm.
But if there's never time to feel that emptiness and that hollowness, I think it can be really easy for it to just fester,
Yes.
maybe, or be filled with things that are not life-giving. And we all have our long lists of things that we think we want that are not life-giving.
Yeah.
Or that we can have in small measure that will probably not do harm. But
I love that. I love that distinction, right? We want to label this is good, this is bad. It's not always that clear.
well, and I'm trying to stay away from good and bad
Yeah.
and just gear more toward life-giving
That's
or helpful or unhelpful
Yeah.
to me.
And maybe on a certain day, sitting down and watching Netflix might actually be really life-giving.
Might be what you need.
Yeah, but if that's the only thing we go to for rest,
Well,
yeah.
maybe we could expand a
Yeah.
little beyond that. Yeah.
I've talked about it a lot. I think we don't know how to grieve anymore as a culture. I've overused this example, but when Jerry Buss died, I'm not a Lakers fan, but didn't even have ESPN. I think I was getting my oil changed or something at Firestone, and there's ESPN, and his funeral was on at the Staples Center, and there's Magic Johnson saying, "This is not a day to be sad, it's a day to celebrate." And I just got so mad because I thought, I understand the sentiment, but if you can't be mad, if you can't be sad at funerals anymore, where am I allowed? Where? Tell me where I'm allowed to be. And I guess the answer is privately, alone, with a counselor. Otherwise, keep it out of my face. We don't know how to grieve anymore. It terrifies us. And it just makes me mad. We should be allowed and make space and celebrate grief where we can. I'm watching the show Shrinking right now on Apple TV, which I like and also hate because it's so bad when it comes to what healing actually looks like. For a show that's all about therapy and healing, it is all about like violating professional boundaries in order to achieve healing. And as a child of a therapist who did that all the time, I'm here to tell you it doesn't work. And this week's episode was all about the anniversary of the main character's wife's death, and they're all just singing happy songs together. And it's fine, it's lovely, and it makes for a nice, heartwarming TV, but I thought, you're a year out, or maybe this is year 2, I think it might be year 2, and we're all just acting happy. I don't think that's how this works. At least I'll say this, it doesn't work that way for me. I need space, permission to be sad and not feel ashamed of it or feel like I'm somehow deficient because I'm 2 years out from the death of my loved one and I'm not all better yet. Yeah, I'm not all better yet.
And you won't be.
I'm not gonna be.
Well, you get 3 days off work or 5.
Right.
You know, in the process the death of someone who's been in your life forever. Like,
Yeah.
But you know, I don't think it ever leaves.
I don't think so either.
My mom and my husband both died in the same year, and there are days that I dearly miss my mom.
Yes.
And I dearly miss my husband, but you know, and then I start thinking about the good things, not the bad things, and that helps to pull me through.
Yes. Yes.
And
Thank you. And I think that's right. The grief doesn't leave us. But if we leave it alone, it does even more. If we try to bottle it up, in my experience, it does even worse.
So my
We've
kids,
got to deal with it.
my kids will say to me, "Mom, your mom used to do that, now you're doing that."
Yes. I want to get through this one more quote, and then I'm going to play you a song, because I love this quote, and I'll let you read the rest. Grieving in this culture is not done, and it's seen as a waste of time, because grieving is a powerful place of reverence and liberation. A grieving person is a healed person. Can you guess why our culture does not want a healed person in it? That's a good question to think about. You are worthy of rest. We don't have to earn rest. Rest is not a luxury, a privilege, or a bonus we must wait for once we are burned out. Thought about that a lot. Let's do this before I'm burnt out. I'm ready. There's plenty to grieve right now, but I'm also not burnt out yet. Good, do it now. I hear so many repeat the myth of rest being a privilege. I understand this concept and still deeply disagree with it. Rest is not a privilege because our bodies are still our own, no matter what the current system teaches us. Yes. The system will tell you, you don't deserve this. What difference does that make? The system's always been saying that for 4,000 years. It's up to us to resist that. The more we think of rest as a luxury, the more we buy into the systemic lies of grind culture. So to finish today, I want to watch this video. This is a song called 3, and it's based on the Enneagram system of personality typing. And 3 is, there are 9 types. You don't need to know about the types. And the song is powerful enough on its own. But this personality type in particular bases its value on its accomplishments. What we get done is the basis of who I am. And this song is meant to be a gift to people like that who fall prey to that temptation.
Maybe I've done enough. And your golden child grew up. Maybe this trophy isn't real. And with or without it, I'm good enough. Maybe I've done enough. Finally catching up. For the first time I see an image of my brokenness, utterly worthy of love. Maybe I've done enough. And I finally see myself through the eyes of no one else. It's so exhausting on this silver screen. I play the role of anyone but me. And I finally see myself on a bridge overwhelmed. A mess of a story I'm ashamed to tell. But I'm slowly learning how to break this spell. And I finally see myself. I only want to let my heart feel what it feels. Goes to ones who know value here, where work and rest are equally here. I only want what's real. I set aside the highlight reel and leave my greatest failures on display with an asterisk worthy of love anyway.
Maybe you've done enough. And the culture will never allow you to hear that, feel it, or believe it. So it's up to you to hear this message from God that you've done enough and you are worthy of rest right now. Rest that will allow you to heal, to grieve, and to become fully human again. To let go of our need to produce for others, to run away from our sorrow, and instead embrace the wholeness of our humanity. So may you find rest this day, this week. Amen.